Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 5 of Beyond the Crease, a grassroots cricket original podcast. I'm your host, Behram Qazi, and today I have the privilege, the esteemed privilege, of having a conversation with former New Zealand Test cricketer, Lahore Qalandars hero, and also currently a commentator who was just in Pakistan to cover the Pakistan versus New Zealand Test series, ODI series, my apologies, Grant Elliott. Hello, Grant, and it's obviously a pleasure to have you over here. Hope you're doing well.
Behram, how's it going? Don't forget also Quetta Gladiators. Started with the Quetta Gladiators and then went to Lahore after that. But yeah, just sort of, it feels like yesterday that I was in Pakistan. Had a great time there. We've just got like such a great crew of commentators. I think like the local commentators and obviously all the internationals that came in. If I leave them out, they're going to be angry with me. So, but they're just so hospitable, and it was great to spend such a long period of time there and really get a feel for traveling around. I've never really traveled around much. I've always spent time in just one city. So good to be back home. But yeah, it was a great time in Pakistan.
Well, we absolutely loved having you over here. And I think when we spoke, it was one of the better conversations I've ever had with a commentator because you just break the ice so well. I guess that's something special about you. But I've got a bunch of fun stuff planned to talk about. And that includes some magic moments from your career. And then, of course, your Pakistan experience. I'll start off with a magic moment that a lot of people might not even know of or have completely forgotten and blocked out. It's the Champions Trophy 2009 semi-final, Pakistan versus New Zealand. Pakistan scored 233 odd, and New Zealand are 71 for 3. And Pakistan is smelling a collapse, but out walks Grant Elliott. And then you take them all the way till the end. Yunus Khan drops your catch. I think that people might remember. But you were telling the other day that you played that innings with a broken thumb. So I want to know all about it and what that innings meant to your career, because you were just starting out in international cricket.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think, prior to that, I hadn't really cemented a place in the New Zealand team. I'd always sort of been in and out and been that all-rounder where if they decided to play specialist batter or another bowler, then I'd kind of miss out, or two spinners. So, I mean, it was great being part of the squad and actually got me used to international cricket, but it was a struggle trying to get into the team. And I got 4 wickets against England. My teammates said one of the worst forfeits they've ever seen, but got man of the match that game. And I sort of felt, okay, like this is great. Got an opportunity where I'm going to get a run of games, because New Zealand was in that at that time where, I mean, I went through 5 coaches in my decade of playing, and 3 captains, so people were always in and out of the team. So I got the 4 wickets against England, got man of the match, but broke my thumb that game. So I went back to a Stuart Broad delivery, whacked my thumb, and went and had x-rays, and they're like, your thumb's broken. So the very next day I went into the nets with Andy Moles, and I tried to put like foam on my grip, and the doctor said, listen, you can play if we take the pain away. So I wanted to see like how bad the pain was without painkillers. So had to get it cleared by drug-free sport, because, if you're getting an injection in. So as soon as the first wicket fell, I'd go into the physio room and I'd get an injection into my my thumb, it was a block. So to just block the pain for that area. But those big supporters fingers like that, those foam ones.
Right.
That's how my thumb felt. It felt like it was out there. It was just, it was of no use. But that innings, I guess, maybe it helped me use my top hand a little bit more. And yeah, got through it. We obviously didn't want anyone to know that I had a broken thumb, because otherwise you'd sort of direct your bowling probably short and in at the ribs. And yeah, it was just one of those innings where I went in, and I was pretty clueless against Saeed Ajmal at the start. First time I'd faced him. I remember, the night before you play an international, you always get the bowling analysis that they throw up on the board, or the video analysis. And they showed his Dusra and his, regulation off spinner. And I thought, I can pick that. Anyway, the first ball I faced, because he bowled cross seam, and it was at night. And I used to look at the seam of the ball to see which way it was spinning. Just couldn't for the life of me see the seam of the ball, because it was just so scrambled and so many revs on it. And I went forward to it, and I went, that's the Dusra. And it was the off spinner, appeal for LBW, not out. Next one, I was like, that's the off spinner. It was the Dusra, and, it went the other way. And I just decided to sweep him. So I managed to get away, get out of jail with Saeed Ajmal. Got off to a reasonable start, and then you speak about that catch. I think it was on
Yeah.
40 odd from memory. But
Yunus lost his captaincy after that, so that was
listen,
quite a pivotal moment.
they should have asked me about the catch, because everyone was slamming Yunus Khan about it. But the thing is, I legitimately think that because I went forward and I tried to smash it off the front foot over extra cover, but I got it high up on the bat, and it was to Muhammad Amir. And because I got it high up on the bat, it's one of those ones where the ball's dying, but it actually looks like it's coming quite quickly. So he set himself in the reverse cut position. But as the ball got lower and lower and lower, I remember when he got to that position, I was like, I actually think you might drop this. And the drop came. So that was a lucky break. But along with Daniel Vittori, we comfortably won that one and went into the Champions Trophy final of 2009. And once again lost to Australia. We were, bridesmaids, or whatever you want to call it, spirit of cricket winners. We didn't really lift the trophy, but playing with that sort of pain with the thumb after the final. I think we came to Pakistan. We played Pakistan in Dubai, and I didn't make the tour because of my thumb. But subsequently, the doctor said, "Oh, well, we're not going to operate." So I actually could have come and just try to battle through it. A lot of players battle through finger injuries. I mean, I've got a number of finger injuries. I don't know if that shows my fielding prowess, but you battle through those injuries, and you're never really 100%. But it was an awesome moment, and once again, a moment for New Zealand cricket where together, it seems like in competitions, we just come together so much closer and play as even more of a team to make semi-finals and finals of world tournaments.
Yeah, well, that's a lovely little anecdote. And I mean, Yunus was generally a very safe catcher, so I guess he got the technique wrong at that occasion. But, you scored an unbeaten 75. You also played some brilliant bowlers, a young and sprightly Mohammad Amir. You got Peak Umar Gul in that team. Rana Naveedul Hassan was doing well. Saeed Ajmal was there, of course. Shahid Afridi was also doing well those days. So good job. Great that you took New Zealand home that day. Of course, our hearts were broken. But, New Zealand cricket once again showed the world that, they regularly always pretty much punch way above their weight because they're such a cohesive unit. And that came to the fore in 2015, which brings me to magic moment number 2. And this is probably your favorite one, I'm assuming, because you scored 84 off 73 deliveries versus South Africa, the nation where you were born. So we'll get to that as well. But this was also a team with a fantastic bowling lineup, wasn't it? Like Dale Steyn, Morne Morkel, Vernon Philander, Imran Tahir. It was just jam-packed with superstars. And South Africa actually scored 281. And then due to rain, New Zealand had to score 298 in 43 overs. 128 for 3, outwalks Grant Elliott. And then once again, unbeaten 84 odd of 73. Take your team home, batter Dale Steyn in that final over. And then there's always that picture that we remember, right? Where you're leaning out with your hand, reaching to Dale, that, in a great show of sportsman spirit. So just walk me through the emotions. Talk to me all about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I guess, it's what dreams are made of. I mean, the strange thing is, as you said, growing up in South Africa, I always pictured myself as a kid in the backyard playing for the Proteas and playing international cricket for South Africa. But obviously those dreams were squashed when I had a contract dispute with Gauteng Cricket, and then ended up in New Zealand somehow. So to then play for New Zealand against South Africa, and to finish it in the way that we did, and I was lucky enough to be at the crease. It was a very special moment, and I look at it, and we're always about team, the New Zealand team, and there were so many innings that made that possible. You look at Brendon's quickfire 50. I mean, he always got us off to a great start. So Brendon got us off to a great start. Suddenly, when the likes of Ross and I came in, then it was sort of at like 6 or 7 and over, which is manageable at Eden Park. And I always felt like Eden Park, if it got above, 10s, 11s, then you were maybe in a bit of trouble. Still that one boundary and over, but it was so far out of the game. But if we just kept going at 6s, run a ball, it meant that, we had an opportunity. And AB de Villiers was also change bowler that day. So he had to make up 5 overs. So we always knew that we had those 5 overs. That we could look to dominate, I guess. But, Ross played a pivotal innings there and partnership. And then Corey Anderson, who's now playing for American cricket. He came in and we had a great partnership. But then you can't discount what Daniel Vittori did in the last over. You know, he managed to squeeze one past Morne Morkel in Dan Vittori style, you know, just guided down to third man.
And funny how Dan Vittori was part of both those games, right? The Pakistan one in Joburg and then this semi-final in Auckland, and he's just a superstar for New Zealand, so not surprised.
Yeah, no, I mean, most of the stuff he's done in his career, you know, everything he touched turned to gold, and yeah, he was just the perfect man to come to the crease. But you know, getting to that last over, where, as I said, I was one of those players that was always sort of in and out, and I think that, you know, even leading up to the World Cup, the team went on a trip to Melbourne. It was a squad of 19 that they took to Melbourne because they said, they wanted to give people a feeling of what it's like to be at the MCG in case New Zealand made the final, because we wouldn't be traveling to Australia during the competition. And I wasn't actually a member of that 19-man squad. So I was outside almost the 19-man squad, knew that I was a replacement player, suddenly had a great run of form domestically, made it into the team, and now found myself in the last over against, you know, one of the world's finest bowlers, Dale Steyn, and down to the last 2 balls needing 5 to win. So there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of pressure that goes through you in that moment. But I think the most pleasing thing about it was, you know, the teammates afterwards, just the teammates, the fans, the hype around the moments. It was the first time we made a World Cup final. Subsequently, you know, 2019 made that final as well now. So we've got a lot of finals experience. We just haven't been able to lift the trophy. And to get over that moment, I think something that I always look back on now and I reflect on is why did I play cricket for so long? Because I must admit, you know, at the age of, you know, 26, I wasn't earning a living playing cricket. I was scraping a living. And I look back at it and I was like, why didn't I just, you know, go and get a job? And there was a time where, you know, at the age of 30, I applied for a job in Melbourne and then suddenly got picked again to play against South Africa out of the blue. And you look back at that and you think that perseverance and hard work and everything you put in to playing the game came down to that moment. And, you know, I think that had I had that moment early on in my career when I was younger, and probably less resilient and didn't have those battle scars, I think maybe I would have butchered it. Maybe I would have been, you know, a little bit too nervous, too anxious. But I think that, you know, when we look at teams, a lot of times we look at selecting players and we go, you need to, you know, what about the youngsters, the succession of the youngsters? Older players, more mature, more experienced players have battle scars, more experience, more perspective. And when you're in a moment like that, the moment, if you don't have that perspective, it's very difficult to get through that moment because the moment becomes too big. It becomes too important. You have to put your life into perspective, and cricket's not the most important thing in life. There's other things that are important in life, and there's a winner and a loser. And I had great perspective at that time in my life where, you know, it was going to be Dale Steyn or me, South Africa or New Zealand. And there's always a winner and a loser. And whoever the winner is, it's like you congratulate them and you put, you know, with a bit of humility, you put your ego away at all times and you respect that team. And I think we had a lot of respect, South Africa and New Zealand. You know, they came and shared a drink with us in the change room afterwards. We chatted about the game, and just a great bunch of guys and a great moment. There were so many amazing moments in that game. Mine was one of them. And luckily it was, you know, the last hit. And that's the glory you get as a middle order player sometimes. And it's one that when you at the end of the innings, if you're not out and you've won the game, you feel like you've done your job. So when people say, you know, how did it feel? Like, I let out a roar, but it was more a roar of, you know, contentment and relief, you know, relief that you had done your job rather than, you know, look at me, look at what I've done. So, you know, I think like if everyone can be accountable to their role and do their role, that's the greatest feeling, to look your teammates in the eyes and know that you've performed and you've done your role to the best of your ability.
Was it bittersweet at all, given that it was South Africa?
Yeah, it was actually really a sweet moment for me. You know, when I came to New Zealand, I decided that I wanted to be a New Zealander. I didn't want to be a South African living in New Zealand. And I think that that's important, especially if you're looking to live in a country, grow a family in a country. you want them to be integrated into that community and that society, and
Hmm.
not feel alien to it. So
Right.
I supported the All Blacks. I dedicated my life to New Zealand, and it was sweet in a way how my time ended in South Africa. It
Hmm.
ended in a way that, was quite bitter, where I was left
Hmm.
off the contract list. And yeah, I felt at the age of 23, I wasn't even told. It was kind of like, this is the contract list, you've been left off. And I was in
Hmm.
Holland at the time, so made my way to New Zealand after that. So yeah, I mean, I felt for the South Africans, and you speak about that image of picking up Dale Steyn, but
Hmm.
um, having lived through the pain of South Africa leading up to 2003, which is when I left, there was
Hmm.
always dramatic exits to World Cups. So I
Hmm.
felt those dramatic exits, and I felt like this was yet another dramatic exit for them. And they had
Right.
like you said, they had a gun team, amazing
Hmm.
team. And there was a moment in play there where the rain came down, as you said. That moment there was like the last 5 overs of the game where, I mean, they could have, who knows how many they could have scored. Trent Boult was bowled out. I was probably going to bowl a number of those overs, which scared me a lot, because I think AB was in at the time. So, like I said, lots of different moments that contributed to a win, but it was almost sort of destined to happen. And I guess once we won that, we felt like we were maybe destined to win the World Cup, but wasn't to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, that moment in particular, even though you didn't go on to lift the cup, I think New Zealand's journey in that World Cup was a brilliant one, the way Baz McCullum led them and pitched in with quick runs at the start. And one thing that I really enjoyed in this whole dialogue that we're having is that you mentioned how you coming clutch at the right moment came with battle scars, and you've come clutch all the time. So I think this is very important takeaway for our viewers and listeners, that you only get that clutchness with enough experience, and in your case that is proven right. But on that same note, let's fast forward a few couple of years, and now you're in a Lahore Qalandars jersey, and all of a sudden you're a cult hero, because after Lahore being 5 for 69 and chasing 145, I believe, versus Islamabad, you were there and everyone is falling on the other end, everyone's losing their wicket. One wicket is left and Grant Elliott smacks a six. Lahore win at a time where the Qalandars weren't winning a lot, and then you drop the bat just like a mic drop. Just talk to me about that moment and what that meant to you in your franchise career, and also how was it like, playing with the Lahore guys. I remember there was this video of Fakhr introducing himself to you that went viral. I don't know if you recall or not. I'm not even sure if we can say or talk about it over here in this podcast, but it's just I want to know about your experience playing in the PSL, and also that moment in particular, and like, being the David Visa before David Visa existed, at least for the Lahore Qalandars.
Yeah, it was a special time. I mean, I think the owners are fantastic. Samin, Atif, and Fawad. They were great owners of the team, and they did a lot. Well, they do a lot for cricket in Pakistan. And the Finder Kalanda program is amazing. Harris Ralph's story. I mean,
Mhm.
you know, it's unbelievable to pluck someone from like obscurity to now be a mainstay in the Pakistan team and feared bowler around the world. So yeah, amazing franchise. But one of my beliefs around the T20 circuit was, there was a lot of people there. There's obviously money to be made by players, but
Mhm.
was to try and be one of the best team players. And that was something that, Brendon McCullum, he was captain of the Qalandars at the time,
Mhm.
instilled in in all the players. And I think that character trait about being selfless and about being for the team is so important. So, integrating into the culture of the guys, getting to know your players. It's not just about turning up, staying to yourself. It's about actually giving energy, giving experience, giving as much as you can to an environment so that you can make that environment as productive and high performing as possible. But also, I guess, relax. Like, if you
Mhm.
have trust in people around you, you can relax with your job because you've got trust that someone else will perform their role. We were losing at the time, the Qalandars, and trying to find our feet. And yeah, that game, once again, that was just like a an act of relief and content, I think, when I dropped my bat. I'd had a relatively late night the night before, and I was just sort of, I couldn't believe that I was there at the end again in a game thinking, Mohamed Sami, I thought, well, he's coming to the end of his career, but he was bowling 148 clicks. I remember
He
looking up at the
was the
board and
standout player for Islamabad for a while, wasn't he? He wasn't easy.
yeah,
He defended two off the last over in one of those games.
No, he was. I mean, one went past my head, and then I looked up at the board, and it said 148 kilometers, and I was like, "Oh no, like, what am I doing here at the end again?" And I think we were 9 wickets down, and hit the ball. But I think what was magical about that moment was, obviously, I don't know why I did the bat drop. Whether I regret it or not, I don't know. But it was the lighting and the videography behind it made it even more dramatic. So there was this dramatic win. And I think what was so hilarious afterwards was that kids in Lahore were doing bat drops, playing tape ball cricket and street cricket, and like they were going viral. So it's cool to be remembered for a moment like that. I think we almost broke through the top 4 that year. I think it was a Karen Pollard 6 off the last ball over square leg that knocked us out that year. But yeah, fond memories of playing in the PSL. It's a great competition. It's a tough competition as a middle order player, I always find, because the bowlers are really skillful in terms of their changes of pace, slow ball bounces, Yorkers. So yeah, it was challenging, but loved it. And it's great to see Lahore performing so well now. Hopefully I can say that I've contributed a little bit to that. But yeah, both Quetta and Lahore, love playing for them, and they'll always be, I guess, the 2 teams that I'll follow quite closely when the PSL happens.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a moment that we won't forget because it kind of became iconic. You became a cult hero, and even though Lahore were losing, everyone remembers that bat drop. People remember that bat drop more than the 2009 semi-final innings, at least in Pakistan, I guess for good reason. But you spoke, of course, about coming and traveling to Pakistan. That's how you started off in this podcast, and now you've spoken about the PSL. But you've had a fair few visits, right? You've played the PSL. You were part of the World 11 that toured Pakistan in 2017, which was quite a critical moment where Pakistan really needed that help. So that was a really good series. I remember in the second T20 when you guys won, everyone cheered for the World 11, and that still gives me goosebumps. And then now you've come as part of the commentary team, and now you've also mentioned of how you've really gotten to explore Pakistan a bit. So talk me through the Pakistan experience, and also talk to me about how you've seen cricket in Pakistan grow in this period in terms of fan following and people coming to the stadia.
Yeah, I mean, that journey from the World 11, and I was playing in Birmingham. I was captaining the Birmingham Bears team. I think I probably retired, I think, that year. And yeah, we went to Pakistan, Lahore. We were the first team. I was the first, Kiwi African or Safiwi, whatever you want to call it, to go to Pakistan in 13 years. And there was obviously concerns about it, the security risks, and obviously there still are, some concerns around that. But we were asked to go and obviously take the risk into account, and I was keen to go. Obviously, it was going to be a great experience, and it certainly was. The thing that I remember the most vividly was getting to the game, and obviously an amazing stadium in Lahore, but it was the crowd. Like, I think the crowd, it took them a long time to get into the stadium. But when they came into the stadium, there wasn't that buzz, there wasn't that like real action that I saw recently in the New Zealand-Pakistan series. And I think that they were still like trying to reacquaint themselves to international cricket, and to the players and just to the atmosphere. By the time we hit game 3, then there was more of a buzz. There was more of an atmosphere. And a few years on now. How many years is it on now since that?
Almost 6 years.
Yeah, 6 years now. So 6 years on now, you look at the crowds. Oh, they know the players. They love their cricket, and cricket's just grown in Pakistan. It's massive. The PSL, international cricket, and it's about knowing who your stars are. And Pakistan just have so many stars. They've got so many opportunities to grow players, and I always think that if they can get their scouting right, Pakistan, get their selection right, you've got such a rich pool of players that, India and Pakistan, no one should touch them in world cricket. New Zealand should never beat Pakistan in world cricket. It should never beat India in world cricket because of the talent pool. If you can get Harris Ralph out of Find a Qalandar, imagine you did find a clean green Pakistan player, around the nation. It's like, you find people that bowl 140 k's an hour in the local parks. New Zealand has to probably poach a player from another country to get someone to bowl 140. And yeah, the cricket love of the game is something that strikes me, but also the hospitality and love for
Mhm.
your country as Pakistan people. I really did get a sense this time around being a commentator is, everyone wants you to like taste the foods. Food's a big part of
Mhm.
the culture. And it's a really proud part of the culture in the different cities. They've all got their different, tastes and dishes. And I think that everyone, it's great to see how proud they are of a nation to try and build it. And as an overseas guest, I guess they don't see many tourists. People don't see many
Mhm.
tourists. So when they do, they try and be as hospitable and interested as they can. And yeah, it's a special place to be. It really is. And I think anyone that's got pride of country and patriotism, or you just have to watch the Pakistan fans when they go to a world tournament. I've never seen such a proud bunch of fans ever. So Pakistan's got a special part in my heart, or place in my heart, and I think it's special being a commentator, being able to go outside of the hotels and get to experience that as a player. Sometimes you don't. You just go from hotel to cricket ground, and I've traveled the world, but I've never experienced the
Mhm.
world, and I'm looking forward to experiencing more of the world and more of the cultures and
Mhm.
what they have to offer through the love of cricket.
Well, I'm sure lots of listeners and viewers would have loved to hear that because Pakistanis do really pride themselves over their hospitality. It's kind of like our thing. So thank you so much for appreciating that. And thank you so much for giving everything that you have, in your personal life, making the trip to Pakistan when things weren't too great and there was a lot of fear around touring Pakistan. You broke that barrier and you continue to do so. And, you speak of the hospitality, the reception, and the love you've received. What I want to talk about is that during this tour, as a commentator, you took to the streets in Karachi, you went to a park, and you faced some absolute speed demons in tape ball cricket. So I would love to hear about that. What was that like, Grant?
Right. So the producer asked me, he said, "Hey, listen, we want to do a little segment on tape ball cricket in your time in Pakistan. Do you want to go to the park?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that's cool." And we rocked up there. And as soon as we turned up, a few of the players sort of like knew who I was. And then obviously then they kind of heard and there was a little bit of a buzz around. And there was a guy in a white shalwar kameez and he came straight up to me and he said, "I want to bowl at you." And I just thought, geez, it's a bit aggressive.
Hmm.
He's quite confident. And I was sort of watching and we were doing a few segments just before I went and played. I bowled first and they taught me how to tape the ball up. Now,
Hmm.
when my brother and I had played tape ball cricket, we used to tape up just one half. So we
Hmm.
used to get it to swing. And anyway, bowled a couple, lots of slow balls. And then it was my turn to bat. And this guy, no shoes, white shalwar
Hmm.
kameez, on the like cement or brick sort of paving, where the ball just gathered pace. Like it was quick, man. And you're probably going from, I don't know, 15 to 18 yards away. So it's not a full cricket pitch. And the first one was short and like at my throat, and I just managed to kind of just like swat it away. I said to the producer, because I just seen Aruj Mumtaz as a dentist. She sorted out something in my teeth, and I said to the producer, I said, "I reckon this guy's going to knock my teeth out. Is this safe?" Because before we went, he said, "Maybe I'll bring a helmet." I was like, "No, you don't need to bring a helmet." But yeah, these guys like so much talent and running in, and there's a few videos on my YouTube and TikTok, which I recently sort of put up. And yeah, they were incredible talents. And the way they hit the ball, some guy turned up in his jeans, he wanted to face me, and he smoked miles. But luckily, the producers made it look like I dominated that session, but I didn't really dominate that session. There was a lot of backing away, giving myself room because I didn't want to get one in the temple or in the teeth.
Well, you're lucky that Aruj was around because had that happened, she would have sorted you out. And you're also lucky that the guy in the Shalwar Kameez, white Shalwar Kameez, barefoot guy, he wasn't playing the 2009 Champions Trophy semi because had he bowled short to you that day, maybe that would have unruffled your feathers with that broken thumb situation going on. But of course, Pakistan has a history of rich, fast bowling prestige, really. I mean, Pakistan has produced so many fast bowlers over the years, and right now the current lot has some absolute gems as well. You've got Shaheen Shah Afridi, Haris Rauf, Naseem Shah, just to name a few. I'm not even getting to the bench. So, which of these bowlers would you be more most uncomfortable padding up against?
Well, in 2003, and you'll be able to have a look at this scorecard. You can go back in the archives. There was a warm-up game for the World Cup 2003, and I was playing for Gauteng in the strikers or whatever they're called. And we played against Pakistan. Now, the bowling attack that I played against was Wasim Akram, Waqar Yunus, Mohammad Sami, Shahid Afridi, Abdul Razak.
Wow.
Yeah, that's those 5. Oh, and I forgot Shoaib Akhtar.
Oh,
How
my
can I forget
God.
Shoaib Akhtar? So there were 6 bowlers, and they were all like world-class bowlers. And I turned up, and I'd always been batting sort of middle order during that year. And I turned up at the game, and the coach is walking towards me, and I thought, I know what he's going to tell me. And he stands in front of me, and he goes, "Listen, we want to give you an opportunity today. We want you to bat at 3."
That's a death wish against that bowling attack.
That's a nightmare. That is like,
you got runs, didn't you? You got runs that innings. Tell me you did.
I got runs. In fact, it rained, and if we hadn't lost a wicket, maybe it was my wicket, we would have won on Duckworth Lewis.
Wow.
But it was a hard-fought 30, I think. And facing those guys, I mean, they were terrifying. And the funniest thing about it is I was more of a probably bowler back then, and I was bowling at the death. And the captain said, I was bowling to Wasim, and he goes, "Bounce him." And I go, "I'm not bouncing Wasim Akram. I'm batting at 3. Are you crazy?" And he goes, "Bounce him." So anyway, I bounce him, and he ducks it, and it goes over his head. And he turns to the guy at point, and he goes, "What number's he batting today?" And I went, "Oh, number 3. So I come in, and I'm absolutely bricking it. First ball was a bouncer to me. So facing Wasim that day, honestly, I've never experienced swing like that. I remember leaving one and going, "Oh no, there goes my off pole," and it must have missed by a millimeter, and the keeper taking it down leg. So to face all those bowlers, Shoaib, scary, Waqar, obviously, Shahid Afridi, very difficult to pick, and then Abdul Razak, Mr. Consistency, and Sami was the quickest on the day that day. But I think in the modern day, I think it's always the left armers, Shaheen Shah Afridi, left armer that can swing it back into the boards, because you always set up for that as a right-hander. So you set up for, you don't want to get out LBW, and then he trails one across you, and it just brings in both opportunities, the LBW and the nick off. So on their day, left armers are just so tough to face, I found.
And I'm sure there's no Qalandars bias over here, of course, because you've probably played with young Shaheen, haven't you? Maybe when he was like really starting off.
Yeah, I think he was youngster starting off, but I mean, the first time I saw him was under 19s in New Zealand. So I was commentating for ICC then, and I just thought, wow, this guy's like head and shoulders above everyone else. You can see height, like physical dominance, just what he could do with the ball, the skill level, and just such a, like, I think he's grown into a real leader. Like, speaking to him now during the commentary stint in Pakistan and just having a brief moment with him, when you speak to players, you can really get a sense for how level they are and how they think. And I think, it goes back to that maturity and experience, where I think experienced players have more chance of getting you over the line than younger players, because they have those battle scars. But the key is to get a 40-year-old head on a 23-year-old body. That's what you want. And I think Shaheen Shah Afridi, like, through his cricketing experiences now, he's grown in stature, grown in maturity, and he's going to be, let's hope, injury-free and just, one of the greats that Pakistan will have.
Yeah, I mean, we have really high expectations, and he is 2-time PSL winning captain now with the Lahore Qalandars. I'm sure you enjoyed that bit. And that was a lovely anecdote, of course. But you spoke about, Pakistan's fast bowlers currently, but you've actually seen them up close as a unit. Pakistan was playing full strength pretty much in this tour of New Zealand. What do you make of this team? Because it's a young team, but not so young. They do have some experience under their belt. They have some absolute world-class players in Babar Azam, Rizwan, Shadab, Shaheen Shah Afridi, the rest of the bowlers. They are really, really good. And this is probably the best I remember Pakistan going into a World Cup since probably 1999. Like, people expect a semi-final appearance at the minimum from this team. So what do you make of them? Do you think they've got what it takes?
This is always the difficult thing, is the expectations of the Pakistan fan. You guys put a lot of pressure on your team, eh? And it's quite funny. Like, I mean, maybe just expect, under promise and over deliver. It's the best way to be. And I think like that's what I mean. As New Zealand, we don't. I guess we always play the underdog card, and go in as
Dark
underdogs.
horses. Let's call New Zealand dark horses
The
because they
dark
do have a good
horses.
record now, right?
Whereas
Of
Pakistan go in and they're like, if we don't win, then we should drop all the players, change the selection panel. I think you guys have an amazing team. When I watched it recently, you look at the world class players. So you've got your top three. You've got Imam Al Haq, you've got Babar Azam, and you've got Fakhar Zaman. Now they're all in the top 5 in ICC rankings in ODI rankings for batters. So you've got 3 of the top 5 in the top 10, or 3 of the top 5 in the rankings. So there's 3 players. Then you've got Rizwan. There's 4. Shadab, who I rate very highly as a multifaceted player. I think he's underrated in Pakistan. And then you've got your 3 bowlers. You've got Shane Shafridi, you've got Naseem Shah, and you've got Haris Rauf. So I've just rattled off 7 players there that now we're looking at world-class players. The only thing that you were missing was really, through the middle. And, suddenly Iftikhar played that innings, and it was like, okay, well, there's a piece of the puzzle. And I'm definitely missing out a player here, but
Salman Ali Agha is the only player you've missed at this point. I think you've got everyone else. Nawaz and Salman Ali Agha.
Who's the other spinner?
Nawaz. Mohammad Nawaz.
Nawaz comes in.
Osama Mir has done well as leg spinner.
And Osama Mir, yeah. The team I named is sort of like your nucleus of players. And then from there, I do rate Shan Masood highly. I know that, he's had his ups and downs. You look at him in the Vitality Blast, like, he's a quality player. I think he's just one of those players. Give him the battle scars, give him time, keep him in the system. He will come good. He will come good for you. But you have to keep the faith. And you look at Brendon McCullum and what he does, and what we've done in New Zealand is we keep the faith and consistency with players. If you can have that consistency, so keep that nucleus of players and have a consistent squad, well, then you can have consistent results. But what frustrates me with Pakistan is the consistency. Players are in and out all the time, and it's kind of like, they've got all the talent. They're the team you don't want to meet because that so talented, and I think that structure around it, and that's where I think Mickey Arthur and Grant Bradburn I think will come in, is putting that structure around the team, making sure the team is fit and that they tick all the boxes. If you do everything possible, do the 1%ers, you can be fit enough to be on the field to have that consistent team. And I think, you're right. Like Pakistan, the expectation should be semi-final minimum. But, World Cup, everyone wants to make the semi-finals. You just have to make the semi-finals, and then it's anyone's game from there. Right. You can't predict who the winner's going to be because, one moment, one, special performance from one of those players. And I think that, when I talk about world-class players, they're about players that can take the game away from you in a special moment, and what they do. Like Shane Shafridi, what he did in the Champions Trophy against India, like a small patch of play where suddenly the game just goes away from the opposition. And Pakistan have that opportunity, especially in subcontinent conditions.
I think one real nail that you hit on the head over here was inconsistency in selection and them not going with, a settled squad. I hope they get that right, because this team, at least in my books, has what it takes to even lift the cup. You said that after the semifinals, it's just luck of the draw, flip the coin, whoever handles their nerves better. But I think they're good enough to win it. So let's hope. I mean, myself, along with a lot of Pakistani fans, will be hoping that Babar Azam can lift a World Cup in India. Of course, that also might be wishful thinking, but one can only hope. I'm just going to go on a slight tangent over here. I know we're running short on time, but you've spoken so much about Brendon McCullum in this podcast that I really want to know how you look at him as a leader. He seems to be the most influential cricketer in your career.
I think there's so many people that are influential in your career, and I think you look back at your teenage years and even your like formative years when you started playing cricket. Like I had a coach, John Ridgway, who unfortunately now has passed, and that was I was at a school where I was fortunate enough where you had PE during the week, and if you were a cricket player, you went to the cricket nets, and sometimes there was a county pro there who would coach you. So John Ridgway was like the first that I think of. And then, many coaches, Andrew Kramer, Ray Jennings.
What about captains, though?
Yeah. Captains, I had Daniel Vittori, Ross Taylor, and Brendon for New Zealand.
Star-studded.
I played in Fleming's last game. They've just won the IPL, which so congrats to Flem on that. Unbelievable. He's been outstanding there. And I think they all brought different things, but I think Brendon, I was probably in my best headspace then. And I think, I was at the age where I talk about those battle scars and I could give a lot to the team. And I probably wanted to be remembered as someone who was a real team player. And that wasn't so at the start of my career, because you're just so focused and you just want to perform. And I think that can hold you back as a player. I think, if you get out of your life and into other people's lives, then suddenly it makes your life a little bit easier, celebrating success around you. And Brendon was all about team, and as I said, about selflessness and about giving, energy to an environment. We were a calm, consistent environment, and I think, the expectation was consistency from people's attitudes. It wasn't that if you were having a bad run of form that you were down and you were in the corner sulking. And if you were doing really well, you weren't top of the world saying that you weren't going to do any marketing for the team because you had scored runs. There was no egos. So I think lack of egos, selflessness, and I think, he led from the front. So it was easy to follow him as a player because he would back up his words with his performances. You just have to look at the first shot that he played in the World Cup 2015, where, he hit Kulisekara over extra cover for one bounce four. And it was like, right, like he announced himself and he was like, we're here to play. He played a risky game. And I think he wanted everyone to try and meet him there or close to it. My role was quite different in the team. My role was more playing stability. But even in that role, I had to try strike at 100, So it was still, I had to take a number of risks and calculated risks during that time to try and get that strike rate. But just the brand of cricket that he played, I think, is probably indicative of what we see in the future, and the aggression that is required to play world-class cricket and actually make finals.
Well, we certainly see it in the current English Test team. Of course, they're going to reap the rewards of Baz McCullum's brain and aggression and attitude and selflessness, as you put it, which is quite at the forefront of Baz ball. I know he hates it, but we're going to call it that because, well, that's how it happens in this world. People coin something and now that's a word. One final point that I want to talk about with you, Grant, is that, of course, I'm going to come back to Pakistan. Now, Pakistan has had, stability with respect to hosting international cricket. Since 2019, they've hosted a fair bit. And this year in particular, sure, the results might not have gone their way entirely, but they hosted all the big Sena nations. You had South Africa 2 years back, Australia, New Zealand, England. Everyone has traveled. How important is it for the overall health of the game that Pakistan continues to host international cricket and is a player in the game? Because things are quite skewed with respect to international cricket as we move forward.
Well, I think, like I started off saying, proud Pakistan nation. And, when we came over as World 11, you look at the youngsters and who their heroes are. Like, everyone needs a hero. And I think that's where international cricket comes in. I think there's a disconnect. Like, if I think of, my children sitting on the couch and saying, oh, I want to be a Lahore Qalandar one day, there's a disconnect because it's in Pakistan. It's not in New Zealand. Or I want to be, a Mumbai Indian one day. Like, I'm sure there are kids that kind of say that, but there's a disconnect. There's not a love and a passion for the city and the country that you're in. And I think we talk about patriotism. I think it's healthy for children to grow up and have a dream for playing for their country and have a love of their country and a love of their city, because you want to be able to give back to community. And I just read recently that Babar Azam and Rizwan are going to the Harvard Business School, and Babar Azam talks about giving back to community, and I think that, that's such a healthy place to be, is to think about how can I use my career to give back. And I think if the more cricket there is in Pakistan, the more children will be inspired to play cricket. And it's not just cricket. It's about being proud of your country. It's about seeing the Pakistan flags and Pakistan winning the World Cup final and having that pride. And like, I remember the reason why I was inspired to play cricket was the 92 World Cup. I was watching South Africa, stayed home from school. My mum let me stay home from school to watch that in the early morning. And, I was inspired. And sport is about inspiration. It's about passion and patriotism. And yeah, I don't really want to lose that. The game of cricket is going more to a franchise model. which is fine. But I'd love to see more of a place for international cricket in the future, because I think that it's such an important part of the game.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that 1992 World Cup exit for South Africa. Again, another time where rain
Yeah.
played spoil sports somewhat. So that's like a recurring theme for South African cricket. But yeah, I mean, that was wonderful to hear. You almost made me shed a tear, honestly. That's how beautiful that was. But thank you so much for your time, Grant. You've been extremely generous with it, and I certainly had a lot of fun conversing with you. I hope that our viewers and listeners did as well, and I hope that you also enjoyed this podcast.
I did. It's been great to be involved beyond the crease with Deaf Mango. And it was nice to meet you. I mean, I know that we conversed on Twitter and that, but like to finally meet a number of people in Pakistan that you sort of, I guess you cross social platforms with along the way. And I guess that it's the beauty of the world now. It's, we're connected, and it's about joining cultures. I'm here in New Zealand as a Safiwi. And you're in Canada, I think, are you?
Well, I'm in Pakistan, but yes, I spent 11
Pakistan
years
at
in
the moment.
Canada.
And we're crossing cultures and joining cultures, and I think that that's the beauty of sport. Is it's got the ability to galvanize nations, and you put those differences aside, and you enjoy a game that we're both passionate and we love. So long may it continue, and my love of Pakistan and the people and culture will always be there. So looking forward to my next travels to your beautiful country.
Well, we certainly will be ready to host you. And next time you're around, I'll show you around Islamabad, maybe, because I know you wanted to go hiking, but that couldn't happen. So next time you're around, maybe we can go hiking. And of course, it was an absolute pleasure to connect with you first, converse with you throughout that New Zealand Pakistan series, and then host you. It's been an absolute privilege, a great pleasure for me personally. So thank you so much for taking out the time once again. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in. For similar content, stay tuned. Brought to you by Grassroots Cricket.